So that's what we're going to be listening to on the show today. So we're going to be listening to some good old-fashioned Antifa literature. Keeping in mind that this is over 20 years ago. This was written over 20 years ago. And one of the things that's so depressing to me about going through all of these documents, because I was going through documents yesterday, you can even see some on the Substack if you go to the Better Discourses Substack, which of course is Karlyn, Karlyn.substack.com. Go to this article right here. I'm going to be posting a lot more about the zines on the Substack and showing you guys what these are. This is a zine from 2001 called Queers in Space. And this was on one of the zine archive websites that Reagan sent me. And I was reading this last night, and you can see in this zine, this was written by a student in 2001. And I'm not sure if that was a high school student or a college student, but it was someone that was either of high school or college age that wrote this. And you can see back in 2001, over 20 years ago, before Barack Obama ever got elected president, back when George W. Bush was still in office, back before 9/11. I mean, this stuff has been talked about for a long, long time, right out in the open. And these are the documents that give us insight into the subcultures that influence today's current queer activists. So you can see I documented a little bit on this on the Substack. They're talking about defining their own language, defining their own terms. Well, Bobby, queer Marxists were not in favor of gay marriage. This is a misnomer, and we've actually read documents to this effect. I'm going to be putting one up on the Substack hopefully this week. I should have put it up a while ago, but I just didn't for whatever reason. But queer Marxists were not in favor of gay marriage at all in any way. In fact, they were protesting against it before it was legalized. So that, again, is another instance where the conservative right does not know the enemy that they're fighting, like, at all, in any way. Queer Marxists were very clear. We have read multiple queer Marxist documents saying we are not in favor of gay marriage. Don't legalize gay marriage. Don't do this. Don't do this. Don't do this. We've listened to them on the channel. I did a whole Twitter space about them a couple months ago. The reason that they're not in favor of gay marriage is because marriage, like, that was the advent of homonormativity. We've all heard the term heteronormativity, which is basically the way that queer Marxists say they need to push back on the normal, the legitimate, the dominant, the norms that uphold the capitalist world. Well, homonormativity is when the gays assimilate to straight lifestyle. They get married, they get into monogamous relationships, they settle down, they buy a house, they have kids, they have the picket fence, they have a job. That is called homonormativity. And that's not a good thing. And the queer Marxists believe, and they believed this before gay marriage was legalized, they believed this before it ever even went to the Supreme Court, that this is not a good thing, and it was not something they were advocating for at all. So conservatives lose yet again because they never paid attention to what was going on. They never paid attention to who the real enemy was. And now we have all of this queer bullshit that probably could have been cut off at the pass 20 years ago had conservatives actually bothered to pay attention to who their enemy actually was, but they didn't. Queer Marxists doing all this stuff out in the open, putting all this stuff online, no one ever bothered to look at it. And this is like kind of the basis of my consternation with literally everyone who claims to care about the left, is that literally all of this stuff is publicly available. Like, I can't go through every single document on the internet all at once. I am one person with a limited number of hours in my day, right? But there is a huge conservative establishment that has been complaining about this stuff for decades. And they never even bothered to look. They never bothered to go through this stuff. They never bothered to understand where these ideas are coming from. And so these ideas just sat and festered completely unopposed. We are in the predicament that we are in today, with queer being taught in schools, with upwards of 40% of kids identifying as non-binary, genderqueer, gender non-conforming, they, them pronouns running around all over the place. Like, all of this crazy stuff that you see on Libs of TikTok, and I'll show you some of that stuff in a little bit. This problem could have been cut off at the pass back in the 90s. Back in the early 2000s. But the right didn't even bother to understand the real enemy. They didn't bother to understand what they were fighting. And because they didn't bother to understand it, the queer Marxists that were pushing all of this crazy shit into the world operated literally completely unopposed. They operated completely unopposed. They were ushered into schools. had the red carpet rolled out, and no one was there to say no, even though, and I'm going to prove it to you by showing you this scene, they were putting all their ideas out there all the time. It wasn't a secret. It was publicly available. No one looked at it. Let me show you some of the ideas that high school students, either high school or college age, either old high school or young college, so far as my reading of this, were putting out there into the world in 2001. They're talking about the idea of defining your own terms, defining your own language. Define our own terms. Defining our own terms is really important. Words are only symbols and therefore elastic. A word means what you say it does. To speak is to take an action. When you subvert the traditional means of words, especially those used to exert power over you, you are challenging the power that oppresses you and fighting it. Don't let words limit you. Let them empower you. Reclaim the language and its power and use it. They defined queer for us. They defined queer as a noun, a verb, and an adjective. A zone of possibility. An instigator. A gender fucker. Anyone who wants to fuck shit up. To queer, to subvert, to complicate by adding a new voice. Queer. This one is really limitless. Queer is anything. Anything you want it to be. Describing one, those, or things pertaining to queer, subversive, not of the ordinary. They were defining it for us over 20 years ago, and no one listened. Now it's a little not safe for work. No one look. Except that they're saying sex, they're differentiating between sex and gender. Sex is your genitals. Gender, how you relate to your genitals, or a socially constructed idea of expecting, a socially constructed idea and expectation of how you should act. That's the gender binary, guys. They were talking about this 20 years ago. You know, some of you asked me the other day, I think it was on Socialism Saturday, it may have been the stream before, I'm not sure. But some of you were asking me, Karlyn, why do socialists and communists always talk about space? Holding space, taking up space, things like that. Hey, let me tell you, because it's in this queer zine. Think of space and every individual place. Hang on, let me just accidentally open that another window. Think of space and every individual place as, at best, a blank page to be written on. Leave your imprint on space. Let your presence be felt, heard, seen, cause a commotion. Be active. And then it says, wherever you go, there is space and an opportunity to affect it. Never be invisible. Let people see your dissent from the norm. They're talking about space being something that they go into to cause a ruckus, to dissent from the norm. At least you think that you have to be gay or trans to be queer. They actually make it pretty clear that you don't. And I've said this for years, right? Seems like years. I don't know how long I've been saying it. It seems like forever. But being queer is not about being gay or trans. They literally said that in that zine. They have attention all breeders. Breeders are people who are married. Just because you're straight doesn't mean you can't be queer. Back in 2001, straight people could be queer too, according to queer activists that weren't even being listened to. Check this out. This is interesting. Warning. If you look like the American dream, people will assume you are. They will give you privileges, but will exact a price. Your silence. The silence erases your own presence, leaving the dominant culture blissfully unaware of your dissent and dissatisfaction. Find some way to vocalize your dissent. Never be complicit. They're saying that queer is in opposition to the American dream. The American dream, of course, is built on capitalism because queer is a far-left, anti-capitalist ideology. And you can see here they're already like talking about queering your looks. We have the all-American girl over here. They've got a big Xer, the all-American boy, and then you've got them queering their looks. They're dressing gay. The girl is shaving her head. They're queering their looks. They're queering the norms. So you can see this full zine over on the Substack. That is Karlyn, Karlyn.substack.com. But my point is this. It's depressing for me to go through this stuff and analyze it, but it has to be done, quite frankly, because no one else has actually done it. No one else is looking at these documents and looking at it in any sort of cohesive way. I'm trying to catalog it. I'm trying to make a timeline of it. What I want to see is how, because this is the basis of what gain-of-function Marxism is, right? Gain-of-function Marxism is the whole idea that the activists that we're dealing with today on the far left, they're not just influenced by the old school dead philosophers like Mao, Marcuse, Marx, obviously. Like, they're not just influenced by that. And the big mistake that people analyzing the left make is they only read the philosophy of dead people and they think this is the key to the kingdom for decoding what the left is doing. No, it's not. No, it's not. I'm not saying it doesn't have influence. Some retard today said to me on Twitter, Karlyn, are you saying that this is not queer Marxist? And I'm like, only a literal retard would think that I'm not saying this is not Marxist. Like, literally, only a literal retard would say that. But this is where conservatives don't fucking think before they speak. And they think that just because you say Marx's dead philosophy is not the most influential thing in the world. In fact, what I'm seeing, at least when I look in queer activists like Abolish the Family Circles, people who are focused on gender ideology, things like that, the most influential thing tends to be the queer and narco-communist subculture that started in the 60s. I've tracked it back to that, but it really started accelerating in the late 80s, into the 90s, into the early 2000s. That was the heyday of this stuff being produced, and it's been produced ever since then. They've never stopped producing it. There's so much of this shit, we're never going to be able to go through it all. But my point is this stuff is more influential on today's far left activists than the traditional philosophy by the dead people. And all the so-called anti-woke people, all they look at is the philosophy. They're not looking at the subcultural influences that are driving what the real activists are saying and doing in the real world, because I can map what these people are saying in their trainings back to these zines, not back to anything Marx wrote, not back to anything Butler wrote or Foucault wrote or any of those people, even though Butler is not dead, but Foucault is. But, like, my point is this. The subcultures, the social circles that these people are in matters. And this is where they have this is where they exist in solidarity with the comrades. They're not existing in solidarity with Karl Marx. Karl Marx is dead. That's not to say they're not reading his books. Who are they existing in solidarity with now? Who are their comrades? Who are their friends? Who are the people they hang out with? What are they reading? What are they talking about? What's exciting to them? It's this stuff. And this stuff has been available for a long time. And it's so depressing to me that I literally don't know of anyone else even looking at this. I don't know of anyone else looking at this. If there is, please get in touch with me, honestly. But I don't know of anyone else looking at this. Instead, do you want to know what the anti-woke influencers are doing? The big-time anti-woke influencers. This conversation took place today on Twitter. All three of these people can go fuck themselves. All three of these people can go fuck themselves. And this is just a snippet of this conversation where James Lindsay and Chris Rufo and Konstantin Kisin are coming together to try to figure out what is the best naming convention to call everyone who's not a classical liberal, to try to demonize them from participating in any fight back against the left because, oh my god, your ideas are just too crazy, too out there. Only the classical liberals should be able to fight this battle, don't you know? I was so pissed when I saw this. So this is part of a larger conversation, but let me just read you this. James Lindsay's saying they're trying to figure out what to call people instead of the woke right, because the woke right term is obviously not actually like taking off or anything. James Lindsay says, how do you feel about the awakened right, or the original German, reflective of people who made the same turn in the 20s or 30s? And I'm not even going to try to pronounce that. And then Chris Rufo says, my practical objection is that it draws on a false equivalency and reduces the effectiveness of fighting left-wing woke. It's important to note that woke have established position in all major institutions, while right-wing nihilism is still a fringe online phenomenon. And then Konstantin Kisin, the stupidest of them all, says, the two suggestions that have been made to me are the freak right and the retard right. Which shall we go with, gentlemen, as they all sit around and clink their whiskey glasses and smoke their cigars in their fucking ivory tower, completely disconnected with what's actually going on in the world. And Chris Rufo says, I think Edmund Smirk's freak right right is fine as it identifies a very particular element and separates it from the mainstream without creating a false equivalency to the woke left. And then Constantine said, I shall read more and update accordingly. So congratulations, guys. Congratulations. You are all part of the freak right, according to James Lindsay, Chris Rufo, and Konstantin Kisin, because they're the masters and commanders of the fucking universe, and they think they control everyone else and what everyone else is allowed to think and what ideas they can consider. And in the meantime, not a single one of them knows anything about this shit at all. Not a single one of them has ever looked into this. Not a single one of them is hinged into reality with what's actually going on in the world. Not a single effing one of them. But they are the ones that can tell us what to think and what ideas to consider and where to look. And oh, here are the things that we should do to beat the left, darling. We'll tell you from our ivory tower, where we never actually interact with the real left and we just make shit up on the internet all day. But you have to listen to us because we are the highfalutin kings and queens. Well, in case of Lindsay especially, the highfalutin kings of the so-called anti-woke space, and we decide who's in and who's out, and we decide what ideas can be considered. And it's so frustrating. It's so frustrating. Literally all I want, I would give my kingdom for this, and if anyone has any ideas, please let me know. All I want is to find someone on the internet who creates content on the internet who claims to care about defeating the left, to have an honest conversation about who the left is and what they're doing. That's literally all I want. I want one fucking person. I want one fucking big time content creator to have an actual conversation about this, because none of them are. Glenn Beck's not doing it. Mark Levin's not doing it. Charlie Kirk's not doing it. Benny Johnson's not doing it. Dan Bongino's not doing it. No one on Fox News is doing it. No one at The Blaze is doing it. I mean, even Arun McIntyre, who apparently is going to be against James Lindsay, I don't know. I sent him a message. I doubt I'll hear back from him. Sargon of Akkad, I sent him a message on Lotus Eaters the other day. I doubt I'll hear back from him. Maybe I'll be pleasantly surprised. That'd be really nice. Nick Fuentes isn't going to do it. Because this is just not an area he's interested in. Styx Hexenhammer isn't going to do it. Who the fuck else? Who the fuck else? Chris Rufo obviously isn't going to do it because he's in his ivory tower fighting anti-Semitism in higher education or whatever the fuck. Konstantin Kisin is far too stupid for me to waste any time on. I never have a conversation with him anyway. Who? Name someone. Laura Loomer's never gonna do it. Are you serious? I would never. Gloria, that would be lowering myself to the absolute bottom of the barrel. Shuan Head is not fighting anything. Shuan Head is a fucking grifter that has never had a real job in her life. So who? Who can I reach out to? Who can I talk to? I already reached out to him. We'll see if he responds. I doubt it. I doubt it. Because these people are all the same. They're all the same. So I'm feeling a little depressed. And yeah, well, I don't like Arun McIntyre because I don't actually think he's serious about this, and nothing he's actually ever said and done makes me think he's serious about this. But I sent him a message just to be able to say I did send him a message. When he doesn't respond, I'll let you know. Absolutely not. Tick History doesn't know what the fuck he's talking about. I learned that watching one video of Tick History that was so awful, so unhinged from reality that I will never even acknowledge Tick History's existence. I don't give a fuck how big he is. I don't give a fuck how many audience members he has. His content is garbage. So no, absolutely not. Absolutely not in any way. No. And this is the problem, right? This is the problem. There is literally no one in this space that is serious about this. No one that I can think of in any real way. I strongly doubt that. Why? He's a fucking, doesn't he like play video? Like what does he even do? Like does he even like talk about the left? I doubt it. He's never shown any interest before. So I'm kind of, oh yeah, let's just cross Benjamin Boyce off the list because we all know that Benjamin Boyce is way more interested in online gossip and bullshit than he is in the real radical revolutionary far left. Helen Pluckrose is a psycho. Peter Boghossian doesn't know what the fuck is going on. Brett and Eric Weinstein, I'm not even gonna bother. Like, honestly. So who? Who? I don't know. And that's the problem. That is the problem. Yeah, I've been sitting here for a good bit of the morning. Oh, no. No. Not in any universe would I ever lower myself to talk to Stu Peters. He is an idiot. I've been sitting here all morning going, like, I just don't even know what to do anymore because it's also impacting the types of things that I can even teach people, guys. It really is. It's impacting the types of things I can teach people because when people are getting spoon-fed bullshit from their influencers all day every day, it makes it impossible to reach new people. It makes it impossible. So I don't know what to do.